polished obsidian halls of the Vorac Grand Archive hummed with the quiet arrogance of conquerors, floating above the swirling violet storms of Zenthar. Fey, its crystalline spires glittered with stolen history. Today's exhibit pulsed with particular significance. A collection of human artifacts looted during the First Contact War and displayed like trophies. Captain Elias Voss adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, the scar over his left eye twitching as he stepped onto the viewing platform. Around him, Vorac scholars and military elites chittered in their guttural language, their four manipulator limbs gesturing toward the display cases. A Renaissance painting here, an Apollo mission helmet there, fragments of human civilization, neatly labeled and utterly misunderstood. "Ah, the soft skin arrives," came a voice like grinding stone. Archivist Prime Zorath approached, his obsidian chitin clicking with each step. "Come to witness your species' irrelevance." Voss kept his hands clasped behind his back, his expression unreadable, just admiring the curation. Zorath's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among the Vorac. He gestured to a case containing a Viking longship's figurehead. Primitive, isn't it? Carved wood and superstition, and yet he tapped the glass with a claw. "You once thought this would protect you from the sea." A murmur of amusement rippled through the crowd. Voss didn't react. The archivist moved to the next display. A samurai sword, its blade dulled by time. "And this, a metal stick. Your warriors died waving these at our plasma casters." He turned to the assembled Vorac. "The humans fought with honor." The word dripped with contempt. "How quaint." Laughter echoed through the hall. Voss let it wash over him, his gaze lingering on the artifacts. Zorath stopped before the centerpiece, a replica of the Mona Lisa, her enigmatic smile preserved behind reinforced glass. "And this," he said, "the pinnacle of human art, a portrait of some long-dead female, rendered in pigments and delusion." He leaned closer to Voss, his breath reeking of ammonia. "Tell me, soft skin, does it pain you to see your greatest treasures in our hands?" Voss finally turned to face him. "You misunderstand. We don't put our greatest treasures in museums." Zorath's chitin rattled, a Vorac scoff. "Empty words. Your species is broken. Your fleets, ash, your homeworld, a vassal state. What could you possibly—" A chime cut him off. The archive's comm system crackled to life. "Archivist Prime, we have an alert. Unauthorized signal detected in the human relic sector." Zorath's eyes narrowed. "Explain." Voss reached into his pocket and withdrew a small device, a transmitter, its surface worn with age. "You took our history," he said, thumbing the activation switch, "but you never asked why we kept it." The Mona Lisa's eyes flickered. A soft red glow pulsed behind the paint. For the first time, Zorath hesitated. "What is this?" Voss smiled. "A lesson." Alarms blared as the display cases shuddered. The Viking figurehead's wooden surface split open, revealing a hidden compartment, a plasma coil humming to life. The samurai sword's hilt unfolded, projecting a shimmering hard-light shield across the exhibit. Human relics awakened. Zorath stumbled back, his chitin clacking in alarm. Impossible. These were scanned. They were inert. Voss watched as the Vorac guards scrambled, their weapons raised at artifacts they no longer understood. "You scanned for modern tech," he said. "We buried ours in history." The Mona Lisa's frame detached with a soft click. Behind her smile, the canvas peeled away, revealing a fusion mine, its countdown already ticking. Zorath's voice rose to a shriek. "You deceived us." Voss adjusted his uniform again, his smile never fading. First rule of human engineering, archivist: always leave a back door. The first explosion rocked the Grand Archive, sending shards of glass and Vorac elites scattering. Voss didn't flinch. He had a front row seat to the show, and humanity always saved the best for last. The air inside the Iron Will's engineering base smelled of ozone and sweat. Chief Engineer Lena Park wiped grease from her forehead with the back of her cybernetic hand, leaving a dark streak across her skin. The compartment hummed with suppressed energy, the kind that made Vorac Overseer Crix's antennae twitch in discomfort. His chitinous claws tapped impatiently against a bulkhead. "You drag me here to show me junk," Crix sneered, mandibles clicking. His four eyes scanned the cluttered workbench, scattered tools, half-disassembled components, and a single, unassuming device at the center. Park smirked. "Nah, I dragged you here to show you magic." Her organic fingers danced across the device's surface, and a hologram flickered to life above it. Blueprints unfolded in the air, labeled Project Lazarus in blocky human script. Crix leaned closer, then snorted. "This is primitive, a radio. You think this frightens the Vorac Empire?" Park's grin widened. She tapped the device again. The hologram shifted, revealing layers beneath the schematic subroutines, dormant codes, and a single pulsing frequency. "See, that is the thing about human engineering," she said, voice low. "First rule, never build something that does just one thing." Crix's carapace rattled, a sign of irritation. "Explain." Park spun the hologram with a flick of her wrist. "This ain't just a radio, it is a key." She leaned in, her breath fogging the holographic display. "You ever hear of the Blackwatch Protocol?" The Vorac's stance shifted, just slightly. Attell Park saw it. The way his claws flexed, the subtle tightening of his posture. He hadn't. Good. After first contact, Park continued. Earth Command had a problem. We were outgunned, outnumbered, so we got creative. She tapped the device again. A new schematic appeared. A network sprawling across star systems. Every ship, every station, every tool we built had a backdoor. A little surprise for anyone dumb enough to steal our shit. Crix's mandibles twitched. "You lie, our scans detected no such systems." Park barked a laugh. "Of course you didn't. You scanned for weapons, not symphonies." Her organic hand hovered over the device's activation switch. This is the conductor's baton." The Vorac lunged too late. Park's cybernetic arms snapped up, blocking his strike with a metallic clang. Her other hand slammed down on the device. A single tone pulsed through the Iron Will systems. Then silence. Crix froze. "What did you do?" Park leaned back, crossing her arms. "Called dinner." Deep in the bowels of the ship, something answered. A hum, then a shudder. Like the Iron Will itself was waking from a long sleep. The lights flickered, then brightened, casting sharp shadows across the bay. Crix's antennae quivered. "Impossible. Your systems are under our control." "Wrong," Park said, pushing off the workbench. "You thought you controlled them, but human tech, it has got loyalty." She jerked her chin toward the corridor. "Hear that?" A new sound echoed through the ship, a rhythmic thump, like a heartbeat. Then another, and another. Crix's carapace paled. "What is that?" Park's smile turned feral. "That," she said, "is the sound of your empire's bad decisions coming home to roost." The thumping grew louder, closer. Then the bay doors hissed open. Crix whirled. Claws raised and froze. Standing in the doorway was a figure in tattered USN fatigues, its face obscured by a cracked helmet. Its movements were jerky, unnatural. One arm ended in a welded plasma cutter, still glowing from recent use. Park didn't flinch. "Took you long enough," she said. The figure's helmet tilted. A static-filled voice crackled from its speakers. Directive received. Hostiles identified. Crix stumbled back. "What abomination is this?" Park patted the device affectionately. "Not an abomination, a legacy." She met the Vorac's gaze. "Meet the Iron Will's original crew, or what is left of them." More figures shambled into view, some missing limbs, others with exposed wiring sparking across their bodies. All armed, all angry. Crix's voice shook. You reanimated your dead? Park's grin didn't waver. Nah, we just never let him quit. She nodded to the lead figure, Sergeant. You're up. The helmeted figure raised its plasma cutter. The weapon whined to life. Hostile designation Vorac, the sergeant intoned. Engaging. Crix turned to run. Park's cybernetic hand snapped out, grabbing his arm. Oh no, she purred. You wanted to see human tech front row seats. The last thing Crix heard before the plasma cutter flared was Park's laughter and a single whispered command. Welcome to the real first contact war. The derelict battlefield near Pluto hung in silence, a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen corpses. The wreckage of humanity's first fleet drifted in the void, shattered hulls still bearing the scars of the Vorac Empire's brutal assault. It had been a massacre, 12 ships against an armada. The humans had fought hard. They had died harder. The claw of dominance glided through the debris field, its Vorac crew laughing as they scanned the ruins. Sub-Commander Grix adjusted his ocular implants, zooming in on a broken human cruiser. Look at this garbage, he sneered, mandibles clicking. They called this a warship, pathetic. His second, a younger warrior named Vesk, tapped a claw against the sensor console. Why are we even here? These wrecks are worthless. Grix flexed his carapace, a gesture of superiority. Because the Emperor wants every scrap of human weakness documented. Their failures will be displayed in the Grand Archive, a lesson for any species that dares resist us. A flicker on the sensors. Vesk frowned. Did you see that? See what? Something moved. Grix snorted. Your optics are defective. Nothing moves here. The dead don't, the console screamed. Warning glyphs flashed across the screen as the claw of dominance's systems went haywire. The ship shuddered, its stabilizers fighting against an unseen force. Grix snarled, slamming a fist onto the command panel. Report! Vesk's voice trembled. Energy surge, multiple contacts inside the wreckage. Outside the viewport, the dead ships twitched. A broken human frigate, its hull split open like a gutted fish, suddenly flexed. Jagged edges of metal folded inward, reforging themselves. A cruiser listed sideways, then righted itself, its shattered engines flaring to life in bursts of blue fire. Grix's blood ran cold. Impossible. A voice crackled over the comms, ancient, mechanical. Unmistakably human, hostiles identified. The words echoed through the claw of dominance's speakers, crisp and cold. Vorac's signature confirmed. Grix whirled toward the comm officer. Who is that? Where is that coming from? The officer's claws trembled over the console. Everywhere. It's the Rex. The voice spoke again. Protocol. Remember Pluto activated. The battlefield woke up. Tendrils of silver shot through the debris, linking shattered hulls like veins. Scattered pieces of human ships reassembled. Not into vessels, but into something else. Something monstrous. A swarm of drones, each one forged from the broken remains of human warships, detached from the wreckage. They moved with terrifying precision, their jagged forms gliding through the void like predators. Vesk recoiled. What are those? Grix didn't answer. He was too busy watching the first drone latch onto the claw of dominance's hull. Its claws, salvaged from human railgun turrets, dug into the armor. The sound of tearing metal filled the bridge. Evasive maneuvers, Grix roared. Too late. The drones swarmed. They ripped into the claw of dominance like scavengers, tearing open its plating, severing power conduits. Alarms wailed as the ship's systems failed one by one. Grix stumbled as the deck tilted beneath him. Return fire, destroy them. The weapons officer frantically tapped commands into his console. They're too small. Our targeting systems can't. A drone slammed into the bridge viewport, its body, a twisted amalgamation of human cockpit glass and engine parts pressed against the transparent alloy. A single red sensor flickered to life, locking onto Grix. The voice spoke again, this time from the drone itself. Message for the Vorac Empire. The drone's core glowed, building to a blinding intensity. We do not abandon our dead. The explosion tore the claw of dominance apart from the inside, scattering its remains across the battlefield it had come to mock. Silence returned to the graveyard. Then, one by one, the drones turned their sensors toward the stars, toward the Vorac Empire, toward home. The warden's voice echoed through the void one last time, awaiting further orders. The alarms hit first, a piercing wail that shook the glass cases in their mounts. Zoroth's chitinous plates rattled as he spun. 4 limbs scrambling across the archive's polished floor. Containment breach, he shrieked into his comms. Security to sector. The words died in his throat. Across the hall, the Viking longship's figurehead, a snarling dragon carved from oak, twitched. Its wooden jaws creaked open. A hum built in its throat, low and dangerous, until the air itself shimmered. Then, with a sound like tearing metal, plasma roared from its maw. The bolt punched through a Vorac guard, vaporizing his carapace before he could scream. Zoroth stumbled back. Impossible. These were scanned. They were inert. Captain Elias Voss stepped through the smoke, arms crossed, watching as chaos unfolded. A samurai sword's hilt clicked in its display case. The tassel unwound, threads snapping into place as a hardlight shield flared to life. It sliced through the containment field like paper, hovering protectively over a cluster of human artifacts. Zoroth whirled on Voss, mandibles quivering. You knew, Voss shrugged. We're sentimental, hate seeing our stuff behind glass. A Vorac security team burst in. Pulse rifles raised. Their leader barked orders. Just as the Mona Lisa's frame detached from the wall, the painting's eyes flickered red. Down! Voss dropped flat. The explosion sent shrapnel screaming through the room. When the dust cleared, the security team was gone. Only their rifles remained, melted into slag. Zoroth crawled from beneath a toppled display, his exoskeleton cracked. This is heresy. These are cultural artifacts. He tapped the side of a broken case, where a faded label read, Terran War Relics, decommissioned. See, that's the thing about humans. We retire weapons, doesn't mean we disarm them. A whine built overhead. The ceiling trembled as something big powered up. Zoroth's ocular stalks swiveled upward, just as the massive winged victory statue unfurled from its pedestal. Stone feathers split apart, revealing thruster arrays. The marble wings moved, and the entire monument lifted into the air, hovering like a vengeful angel. Archivist. A Vorac technician skidded into the room, his carapace streaked with coolant. The exhibits, their network. Some kind of dormant AI just hijacked our systems. Voss grinned. Ah, the warden's awake. Zoroth's voice was a whisper. You booby, trapped your own history. Nah. Voss stepped over a smoldering display. We just left instructions. A clatter came from the far wall. The Apollo Phi helmet, cracked and yellowed with age, rolled off its stand. Its visor flickered to life, projecting a hologram of Earth. A voice crackled through, old but clear. Houston, we have a problem. Then the helmet detonated. The blast wave shattered every remaining case. Glass rained down as artifacts awoke all at once. A Roman gladius humming with vibro. Edge, a Civil War cannon swiveling on autonomous treads. Even a T-Rex skeleton whose ribcage split open to reveal missile pods. Zoroth collapsed against a wall, his limbs shaking. Why would you do this? Voss crouched beside him, voice low. First contact war. Remember Pluto? You took our ships, our tech, our dead. Thought you'd won. He gestured to the carnage. This is just footnotes. A shadow fell over them. The winged victory loomed, its stone face impassive, its thrusters flared. Then it slammed into the archive's central spire. Metal screamed as the structure buckled. Zorath watched his life's work collapse. You monsters. Voss stood, brushing dust off his uniform. Nah, monsters don't warn you. He tossed Zorath a small device, a holoprojector. It flickered to life, showing the Vorac homeworld. A single red dot pulsed on its surface. That's your capital, Voss said. And that. He pointed to the Mona Lisa's remains. The painting's smile had survived the blast. That was the off switch. The ground shook as the archive supports gave way somewhere. A recording played, an old human song crackling through the ruins. Oh, the land of the free. Zorath's mandibles clicked in horror. You planned this from the beginning. Voss stepped into the escaping lift, the doors closing between them. His last words were almost gentle. Welcome to the museum. The void between stars stretched endlessly, a silent graveyard where light took years to reach. Admiral Vorac stood on the command deck of the Vorac's might, his 4 primary limbs clasped behind his carapace. The tactical display showed nothing but empty space where the Grand Archive's distress signals had originated. Pathetic, Vorac hissed, his mandibles clicking in disdain. The humans think they can challenge us with tricks. His second, in command, Subcommander Jix, adjusted the sensor array. No sign of the Iron Will or its escorts, Admiral. Just static. Vrolk's chitinous plates rattled with irritation. Scans full spectrum. I want that human ship found. The bridge crew worked in silence, their claw dependencies dancing across holographic controls. Then, Admiral, Jix's voice cracked. Energy spike, multiple signatures. The void rippled. One by one, ships flickered into existence. Human vessels, their hulls scarred but weapons primed. The USN Marathon, declared lost at the Battle of Ceres. The Dawnbreaker scuttled during the retreat from Proxima Centauri. Dozens more, all ships the Vorac had destroyed, now floating silently in formation around the Iron Will. Vrolk's claws dug into the command console. Impossible. These ships were scrapped. A voice crackled over the comms. Captain Voss, calm as a surgeon. You're right, Admiral, they were. On the view screen, Voss leaned forward, his scarred face lit by the glow of his own bridge. But you made one mistake, you left the wreckage. Static hissed. Then another voice, mechanical and cold, filled the Vorac flagship. This is the Warden. Authorization code, Pluto's reckoning. All systems online. The dead ships moved. The Marathon's shattered prow realigned, its railguns humming to life. The Dawnbreaker's ruptured hull sealed itself, nanite swarms knitting metal like flesh. Jix's voice trembled. Admiral, their weapons, they're targeting us. Vrolk snarled. Return fire, all batteries. The Vorac fleet unleashed a storm of plasma, only for the shots to pass through the human ships like ghosts. Voss' grin was sharp, holograms, old Earth trick. Then the real attack came. From behind the illusionary fleet, salvaged Vorac torpedoes, stolen from their own armories, streaked toward the Vorac's might. The projectiles split mid-flight, each one deploying a swarm of razor-edged drones. Jix screamed as the first drone impacted, its diamond-tipped drill biting into the flagship's hull. They're boarding us! Vrolk whirled to his weapons master. Seal the breaches, activate internal defenses. Too late. The drones detonated, not with explosions, but with clouds of corrosive mist. Vorac warriors collapsed, their chitin dissolving where the gas touched. Over the chaos, Voss' voice was ice. You took our ships, Admiral, now meet their crews. The boarding pods struck. Not humans, machines, humanoid drones. their skeletal frames clad in tattered uniforms, their optics glowing the same blue as Earth's oceans. They moved in perfect sync, their weapons singing as they carved through Vorac defenders. One drone paused before Vrulk, its voice a recording of a dead captain, for the Dawnbreaker. The Admiral raised his plasma pistol, and the drone caught his wrist, crushing it with a sound like snapping twigs. Vrulk fell to his knees, his carapace cracking against the deck. On the view screen, Voss watched, his expression unreadable. You cheat, Vrulk spat. These are not honorable tactics. Voss leaned closer. Honors for the living, Admiral, and you. You're in our graveyard now. The last thing Vrulk saw was the drone's fist, painted with the old Earth flag swinging toward his face. Silence. Then, from the Iron Will's bridge, Voss turned to his crew. Prep the next phase. The Emperor's expecting us. Behind him, the Marathon's wreckage shimmered and vanished, another illusion dissolving into the void. Only the Dawnbreaker remained, its hull now marked with fresh Vorac blood. The Warden's voice echoed across the fleet. Lesson delivered, proceeding to final objective. The dead ships turned their bows toward the Vorac homeworld and jumped. Zorath dragged himself across the shattered marble floor, his chitinous limbs clicking against the debris. One of his manipulator arms ended in a ragged stump, leaking thick blue ichor. The Grand Archive was in ruins. What had once been a glittering monument to Vorac superiority now resembled a war zone. Human artifacts that had sat dormant for decades had turned the museum into a death trap. A suit of medieval armor had unfolded into a swarm of razor drones. The Wright Flyer replica had sprouted plasma thrusters and taken out an entire security battalion, and the Mona Lisa Zorath shuddered at the memory of that smiling face detonating with the force of a small sun. He found Captain Elias Voss standing amid the wreckage, arms crossed, watching the chaos unfold with calm detachment. The human was covered in dust but otherwise unharmed, as if the archive's destruction had parted around him like water. At his feet lay a single unopened crate, its polished wood surface unmarred by the battle. You. Zorath's voice was a ragged wheeze, his vocal membranes damaged by smoke. You planned this, all of it. Voss glanced down at him, then knelt. Bringing them eye to eye. Took you long enough to figure that out. Zorath's remaining limbs trembled. The artifacts, they were never inert. You let us take them. This one's special, though. Kept it in reserve just for you. The Vorac archivist's carapace rattled in fear. What is it? Voss stood, brushing dust from his uniform. A little something from home. He flipped the crate's latches with deliberate slowness. Savoring Zorath's terror, the lid creaked open, revealing dark, rich soil packed tightly inside. A faint, earthy scent filled the air. Zorath stared. Dirt. You weaponized dirt? Voss scooped up a handful, letting it trickle through his fingers. Not just dirt, earth. He scattered the soil across the floor. Funny thing about humans, we plant flags where we bury our dead, and we always come back for them. The ground trembled. At first, Zorath thought it was another explosion, but the vibrations grew more rhythmic, more intentional. The scattered soil began to vibrate, grains dancing as if caught in an invisible current. Then the marble beneath them cracked, fissures spreading like spiderwebs. Something was rising. A black obelisk erupted from the floor, its smooth surface swallowing the light around it. Symbols flickered across its face, human script, mathematical notations, and finally, a targeting display that locked onto a distant star system. Zorath's blood ran cold. That is our homeworld's coordinates. Voss nodded, watching as the obelisk hummed to life. Yep, and that. He pointed to a countdown now flashing on the display. That is how long your High Council has to answer one question. Zorath's mandibles clicked uselessly. What question? Voss leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Was it worth it? Alarms blared across the archive as the obelisk's systems fully activated. Deep within its core, something ancient and terrible stirred. The Vorac had come for humanity's treasures. Now they would learn the price of taking what wasn't theirs. Zorath collapsed, his strength finally giving out. You're monsters. Voss straightened his jacket. No, we're human. And this, he gestured to the obelisk, now pulsing with ominous energy. This is just us returning the favor. Outside, the sky burned as the first salvos of the human fleet rained down on the remaining Vorac defenses. But the real threat was here, in this room, buried in a crate of simple soil. A final lesson from a species that never, ever forgot. The countdown reached 0. The obelisk fled to life, and Zorath, Archivist Prime of the Vorac Empire, finally understood the depth of his mistake. Humanity didn't just leave traps, they left graves. The Vorac Emperor's throne room had never known silence before. The vast chamber, carved from black asteroid stone and lined with trophies from 1,000 conquered worlds, now echoed only with the rasping breaths of the surviving High Council. Their chitinous plates rattled against each other, a sound like dry bones in the wind. On every view screen, Fleet Admiral Riker's face filled the display. His image flickered slightly, not from poor transmission, but from the interference of 100 human warships, now holding position around the Vorac homeworld. The Emperor's claws dug into his armrests as he watched the impossible. Ships he'd personally destroyed at Proxima, vessels he'd seen burn over Mars, all present, all operational, all aiming weapons at his planet. "You wanted our treasures," Riker said, his voice calm as deep space. Behind him, the bridge of the USN Titan hummed with quiet efficiency. Human crew moved with purpose, but none looked at the screens. They didn't need to. They knew what came next. The Emperor's primary manipulator limb twitched toward the emergency beacon. A single tap would summon the last of the Vorac fleets. A second later, the screen split, showing the black obelisk rising from the broken soil in the archive. Its surface shimmered with activation runes. "Don't," Riker said, though his lips barely moved. "That is not a weapon." Not yet. The High Council's translator spheres buzzed with panic. One of the younger ministers, her carapace still gleaming with the oils of youth, dared to speak. "You bluff. The obelisk is too small for planetary destruction." Riker's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Who said anything about destroying your world?" A new image replaced the obelisk, a data stream, ancient human script scrolling too fast to read. Then it resolved into a single phrase, translated simultaneously into every Vorac dialect. "We remember." The Emperor's mandibles locked. He knew those words. They'd been carved into the hull of the first human ship he'd ever boarded, its crew dead by his own claws. A sentimental gesture, he'd thought at the time. Now, the words pulsed across every screen in the chamber, growing larger with each repetition. "Activate planetary shields," the Emperor roared. A Vorac technician scrambled at his console. "Sire, the obelisk isn't targeting us. It is," the technician froze, "by the void." Riker leaned forward. "It is targeting every piece of human history you ever stole." The screens split again, showing Vorac museums across 12 systems. The Mona Lisa's frame glowed red. The Apollo capsule's thrusters flared to life. Even the simple clay pots from Mesopotamia vibrated where they sat, their surfaces cracking to reveal tiny lights beneath. "You see," Riker continued, "we don't just put our history in museums. We encode it. Every artifact you took had a backup, a failsafe, a way to call home." The Emperor's carapace darkened with dread. You turned your own relics into beacons?" "Not just beacons." Riker's hand moved slightly. Off screen, someone typed a command. "Keys." The obelisk's tip split open. A beam of blue light lanced upward, punching through the archive's shattered dome. It hit nothing, aimed at empty space. For 3 heartbeats, Nothing happened. Then the stars moved. At first, the Vorac thought it a sensor glitch. Then the distortion resolved into shapes, vast, angular, and utterly silent. Ships, hundreds of them. No thousands. Their hulls bore no markings, no insignia, just the same phrase glowing faintly along their keels. "We remember." The Emperor's voice cracked. "What are these?" Riker folded his hands. "The lesson you should have learned before you ever touched Earth." One of the ghost ships rotated slowly, its prow aligning with the Vorac homeworld. A bay door slid open. Inside, nothing but darkness. Then a single point of light appeared. Grew, took shape. A flag. Tattered, ancient. The stars and stripes of a nation dead for centuries. The Emperor recoiled. You kept warships from your primitive eras." "Not warships," Riker corrected. "Graves." The implications hit the High Council like a plasma round. The younger minister actually staggered back, her claws clattering against the floor. You turned your dead into weapons." Riker's face hardened. "We turned our history into a promise." The ghost fleet began to move. Not toward the planet. Not toward the Vorac ships, scrambling to intercept. They moved past everything, forming a perfect sphere around the entire system. The final screen showed Earth, blue, peaceful, unbroken. Riker stood. "This is your only warning. Touch our world again." He nodded to the unseen fleet. "And you'll learn why humanity never throws anything away." The transmission cut. In the silence that followed, the Vorac Emperor did something no living being had ever witnessed. He lowered his head, not in defeat. In understanding, his claws trembled as he reached for the comm. "Recall all fleets. Cease all operations against human space." The High Council erupted in protest. The Emperor silenced them with a single look. "They don't just remember," he whispered. "They wait." Far above, the ghost fleet held position watching. And somewhere on Earth, a museum display updated its plaque. "On loan to the Vorac Empire, expected return, immediate."